Voyager's recent Central States US coin signature auction offered some amazing error coins, most of which came from the Fred Weinberg collection. So why don't we take a look at a few of the more interesting ones of these. Dramatic double-struck coins are almost always eye-catching and can make for fantastic conversation pieces. And when a widely off-center, in this case to the degree of almost 80% double-struck coin is on top of that a variety as well, well, you can hardly ask for more in terms of pure wow factor. The 1890 misplaced date Liberty seated dime has the date misplaced widely towards the bottom of Liberty's gown, and on this coin, right next to it, a massive double-struck error graded by PCGS as MS63. This spectacular coin sold at auction for $9,300. Most modern silver colored coins are what are commonly known as clad coins, not actually made from silver, but instead from strips of bonded metal, two outer layers of copper nickel, giving it the silver color and relative durability, which is then bonded to on either end to a solid copper core. Very rarely do you find a coin that is cut from the very ends of these metal strips, which does not fully have the full copper nickel cladding on either end yet, and only has the exposed copper core. This Kennedy $half, seemingly from 1999, is just such a rare example, authenticated by PCGS as AU58. It sold at auction for $5,280. And while we're on the topic, exactly such a Planchet strip, as previously mentioned, was also on offer. This example was from a 1943 steel penny production run, authenticated by PCGS as genuine. It measures 3.5 by 2.5 inches in total and sold for $780. While another example used to make copper small cent planchets, most likely Lincoln pennies in the end, was similarly graded as authentic and sold at auction for $528. One of the most eye-catching error coins at the auction had to be this incredible 1968 bonded Lincoln cent. Now, during 1967 and 1968, the San Francisco Mint was striking 5 centimo coins for Costa Rica. At the same time, San Francisco was starting to make pennies for circulation again for the first time since 1955. Here, 2 planchets were fed into the minting press at the same time. Because the 5 centavos coin, or at least the blank, was made from stainless steel, which is considerably harder than the penny's soft copper, it was pressed completely into and bonded with the copper planchet, creating this two-tone bimetallic Lincoln cent. Graded by PCGS as MS63 red, it sold at auction for $15,000. So struck-through errors hold a special fascination, as one almost can imagine how a coin can be double-struck or struck off-center, but to have a foreign body introduced in the form of a retained strike-through or a struck-in error is something that almost seems to stretch credulity. Here we have an 1888 Liberty head or V-nickel that was struck along with a brass coil. Somewhere along the line, the coil then became dislodged from the coin itself, leaving its indentation on the reverse of the coin, and then portions of the coin's design detail still having retained on the coil or the flat surface of the coil. Presented here as a set of sorts, graded by PCGS as MS64. It sold at auction for $15,600. Now I'd like to turn our attention to a number of Lincoln cent coins struck on what appears to be experimental planchets. The first is a Lincoln penny dated 1920 with a very unusual light satin brassy, almost olive gold color, which turns out to be struck from an 82% copper instead of the usual 95% copper planchet, with an added percentage of 16% zinc and 2% tin. This was graded by PCGS as MS64 and sold at auction for $5,280. The next two coins are both dated as 1944, and as such is right around the time when the mint was striking zinc-coated steel pennies for circulation, in order to save copper for more pressing military needs in Europe and the Asia-Pacific theater of operations at that time. Whether this is a true experimental coin or an error struck from sheets of rolled stock intended for production of foreign coins is somewhat uncertain, but the metal contains 64% copper, 20% zinc, and 16% nickel, with a massive weight of 4.9 grams instead of the usual 3.1. It was graded as MS63 by PCGS and sold at auction for $12,000. And then one more in this vein is a coin that weighs 3.6 grams, or about a half a gram more than a normal penny, and practically a full gram heavier than a silver dime. So apart from the size being correct, it was definitely not struck on a silver dime planchet. In fact, it has a metal content of 69% silver and 31% copper. Quite an unusual composition, especially for the US Mint. Graded by PCGS as MS62, this coin sold at auction for $19,200. In 1976, the US Mint struck special commemorative Eisenhower dollars for the bicentennial celebrations. San Francisco was tagged to strike special 40% silver coins from this design for collectors and numismatic needs, distinguishing them from the regular nickel-clad coins made en masse. But in 1977, a number of these special silver planchets were inadvertently struck in Denver with the regular Eisenhower design. About 20 or so of these transitional errors are known today, and they are highly priced indeed. This example was graded as NGC MS63, and at auction it attained a closing price of $21,600. A similar error also occurred with the Kennedy half-dollar, where 40% silver planchets intended for the 1976 Independence Hall commemorative silver-clad coins were mixed in with the regular planchet used to strike normal Kennedy halves for circulation in 1977 at Denver. The silver coins are slightly heavier than the normal clad coins, those expected to weigh 11.34 grams, and the silver coin coming in at around 11.5 grams instead. This example tips the scales at 11.6 grams according to NGC, which assigned it a grade of MS62 and saw the auctioneer's gavel fall for this coin at $7,800. Now we have a great and seldomly encountered example of an off-metal error type coin. In 1873, shield nickel of the open 3 variety struck on an Indian head cent planchet. The copper planchet retains a good amount of its mint luster, but since the cent is ever slightly smaller than the nickel, the strike is not perfectly centered on the planchet, and a portion of the rim denticles, as well as about half or so of the date, being off planchet in this case. Graded by NGC and with a provenance from the Palace collection of King Farouk, this MS64 red-brown error was sold at auction for $21,600. Off-center Morgan dollars certainly do exist, but to come across an example that is struck so spectacularly off planchet as this one, 40% off-center almost due south on the reverse, it's almost hard to imagine how the coin like this, made it out of the mint to begin with. The date is clearly seen as 1880, and although the mint mark, if there even was one, is of Planchet, PCGS has come to the conclusion that it was likely a product of the San Francisco Mint. I'm assuming this is because of strike characteristics, but it would have been nice to know exactly what that was based off of, as no VAM number or any reference number appears on the slab other than the MS63 grade. This coin was sold though at auction for $72,000. Now, of course, we simply cannot ignore the star of the show when it came to the error and variety examples, at least. The spectacular Washington State Quarter Sacagawea dollar Mule coin from the year 2000, with its Native American dollar reverse and the Washington Quarter obverse. This coin should not exist. Amazingly, no less than 3 separate die marriages have been identified for this coin across the 18 known examples that have come to light, with this coin being an example of die pair number 1, easily identified by the die crack that runs through the F in of on the reverse of the dollar side of this dual denomination coin, graded by PCGS as MS65+. From the Fred Weinberg collection, this coin was sold at auction for $144,000. Subscribe to WNN and activate notifications with the bell icon so you'll know when new videos are released. For the World Numismatic News, I am Numisman saying thank you for watching, stay safe, keep collecting, and of course have a fantastic day.